and Ducker vs. the Monsters, the show that asked the question, if Schrodinger was to turn off his computer, would this show still exist? Yes, a show that's own horrific nature is defined by the fact that I still keep making it. Yeah, this episode's called Ly-vamp-phropy. It's about werewolves, vampires and shit. So let's go and sink our teeth in, shall we?
I believe that Dracula achieved his true immortality through the movies. And it's Nosferatu, that classic German movie. That's the best Dracula movie ever made, in my opinion. It launched the career of Dracula and made him immortal. Actually, the character in there looks like a vampire should look. It looks like the vampire of folklore, emaciated, ugly, disgusting in the extreme, and very, very scary. After all, it's a corpse. It's a walking corpse. It's been in the grave for a while.
Here's a fun little bit of trivia for you. The vampire bat is named the vampire bat because the researchers who discovered the vampire bat were huge fans of Bram Stoker's Dracula. In fact, it's debated whether he ever drank blood at all. He wasn't believed to have been a blood drinker. What he would do is impale people around his food table and they'd be dying on huge steaks as he ate. He was a sadist, but it's a lot of stories about him, basically. There's a lot of stories about him. They all conflict and no one will ever really know the truth, but for the most part he wasn't a vampire, he was just a fucking tyrant. Although that's fucking debated because people are now saying that could be rumours spread by his enemies.
Dr. McNally had indeed discovered a monster, a titled aristocrat and military leader named Dracula. But was this Dracula merely a ruthless killer? Or was he actually a vampire, someone who drank blood?
One of the new discoveries show that Dracula liked to dine amid his impaled victims. Can you believe that? The stench must have been excruciating. And we have woodcuts, contemporary woodcuts showing that. Anyway, he gathered the blood from his victims in bowls, and then he took bread and he dipped it in the blood and slurped it down. So he was, by anybody's definition, a living vampire.
As always, I like to pretend this show has a factual basis, so let's go hear some facts.
The assumption was that death came from the dead. In other words, if one person died and then a whole bunch of other people died, people assumed that the first person had brought death to the others. And typically what they did was dig up the corpse of the first person and inspect it for evidence that it was a vampire. For example, they would discover that the corpse would often have blood at its lips. The conclusion that they drew was that the reason why the corpse had blood at its lips and was larger than it had been was that it had been drinking the blood of the living.
Modern forensic science has provided a more rational explanation for this phenomenon. As a dead body decomposes, it creates gases which build up pressure in the lungs, forcing blood up through the mouth and onto the lips of the corpse. But without this medical knowledge, it's easy to understand how this natural process could be misinterpreted.
Now here's something a bit interesting, an explanation to the whole garlic and steaks thing.
They took a wooden stake and they plunged it through the heart of the corpse. Keep it from walking. Got to drive it through the body and into the ground underneath the corpse. That's what pins it to the earth.
Vampires were known to have themselves a very strong smell. This belief caused people to feel that if the vampire has a strong smell, then what you should do to ward the vampire off is to put things that have strong smells around you. Garlic would typically be hung up in areas where vampires could enter. For example, you might hang garlic around the windows. And there's an old expression in Latin, similia similiis curantur. Similar things are cured by similar things.
Isn't that how immunization works anyway? Now there is another side to vampirism that I didn't discuss in the previous video, and that is Renfield syndrome.
Psychiatrists recognize a condition known as Renfield syndrome, in which people may have an erotic attraction to blood and believe that the blood itself contains some kind of physical power they can manifest once consumed.
There's no medical evidence that consuming another person's blood is going to have any health benefit or give them any more energy.
In every major city, I suspect that you could find interest in drinking blood, and I wouldn't necessarily want to say that that's the same thing as a psychiatric disorder. Having said that, however, a word of advice, drinking blood from your partner is not a safe sex practice. So I think a health advisory, don't bite your friends. You could acquire dangerous diseases.
And always wear a tongue condom, kids.
There are a number of potential dangers associated with drinking blood. There's the risk of contracting numerous viruses. HIV and hepatitis B and C, all three of them can kill you.
Now I'm going to do something special for this episode. I'm going to take this psychologist's analysis of Renfield syndrome and contrast it with a crazy person who suffers from Renfield syndrome.
My name is Balthazar Ashantisa, and I am a real vampire.
There's a typical pattern in the evolution of this condition that's been dubbed Renfield syndrome, named after the blood-drinking psychotic character in Bram Stoker's Dracula. The first stage generally begins in childhood. Some kind of critical incident occurs where the young person, boy or girl, but usually a boy, discovers that drinking blood can be exciting.
When I was 11, on a church school bus, there was an argument that started between one of my uncles and my sister, and I stepped up. My uncle pinned my arms to my side. I did the only thing I could do. Slammed my mouth onto his shoulder, and I bit.
That was the...
This can lead to a second stage of what is known as auto-vampirism, or the lust for one's own blood. That then can evolve to a third stage known as zoophagia. This involves the consumption of non-human animals in order to drink their blood. So watch out for your dogs and cats in the neighborhood. Vampires at this stage might grab pets.
I start noticing that I get less focus. I get listless.
The most advanced stage of Renfield's syndrome is true vampirism, which involves the drinking of the blood of other human beings.
Czar feeds twice a week, consuming an ounce of blood each time. However, when he is at his most famished, he ingests up to 6 ounces of blood just to satisfy his thirst.
This stage of Renfield's syndrome can develop into serial murder.
Unfortunately, during the last 20 years, there have been numerous reports of other people who were so psychologically damaged, so criminally insane, that they actually acted upon the impulse to commit murder for blood.
New York, 1975. A woman is arrested for a grisly homicide that involved the siphoning of the victim's blood. California, 1978. Richard Trenton Chase is convicted of multiple murder, including at least one count of vampirism. His crimes earn him the nickname the Vampire Killer. Massachusetts, 1980. A young man with a history of mental illness hears a voice that tells him to use bullets painted gold to kill for blood. Only then will he be able to become a vampire. Florida, 1985. A 19-year-old woman accepts a ride from a man named John Brennan Crutchley, a successful high-tech engineer, who, after his capture, is dubbed the Vampire Rapist. Minnesota, 1988. After watching a modern vampire film, three teenagers decide to act out a similar scenario. They confront a 30-year-old vagrant who is unable to defend himself from their attack.
The viewer of Aaron Ducker versus the Monsters knows that vampirism comes from porphyria. This is a blood disease. But also the idea of werewolves comes from porphyria. Because when you have porphyria, your lips, they kind of shrivel up backwards, which gives you a snarling expression, makes your teeth look more pronounced. So the myth of werewolves probably comes from misdiagnosed porphyria. But there is another disease that was probably misdiagnosed, which led to the creation of the werewolf myth, and that is hypertrichosis.
7-year-old Nat Sasupan is 1 in a billion.
The doctor told us he'd never seen a child born like this before.
She has congenital hypertrichosis, or Ambras syndrome. It's known as werewolf syndrome.
According to geneticist Dr. Luis Figuera, this family gives science a glimpse at a long-forgotten time when a thick coat of hair meant the difference between life and death.
They don't have any other problem, any other associated problem like mental retardation and that kind of thing. They are normal people, just they have a lot of hair on their body.
My favourite version of the werewolf is the Mexican Nahilo. What it does is it doesn't kill people like regular werewolves. What it does is it eats cheese and rapes women. That's the fear in Mexico of the Nahil werewolf. It will come and eat your cheese and rape your women. So lock up your doors and hide your camembert. Though this really made a lot of sense to me because it explains why werewolves howl at the moon. Because it's made of cheese.
Even before I met Wolfie in the pack, I mean, I always grew up with a bunch of dogs and animals. I was just an only child around animals all the time, and so I kind of just had that in me. But
you just had that in you, eh? Write your own bestiality jokes at home, kids!
I'm a werewolf in the sense that I guess it's kind of a spirit more than anything. Like, we're not kind of bound by human rules or thoughts.
Not bound by human rules, said every teenager ever.
I had got accused of killing and beheading a dog. I did behead him, I didn't kill him.
Oh, so you're only that sort of psychopath. Good to know.
You got everyone and their mother claiming to be a wolf and a leader of a pack, but when it comes down to actual, like, respect and sticking up for it, people don't even know what alpha means.
Yeah, fuck those Charlie uniform November tangos who don't speak the native phonetic alphabet.
I think, honestly, like, Hollywood's what's got it really, really hyped up, because they relate it to it a lot, but a lot of the things they talk about, like, aren't true. Almost 100% of the things that they talk about are really a lot of bullshit. Like, a lot of people would say, oh, you're allergic to silver. I personally am allergic to silver and nickel, but not all werewolves are. Like, it's an individualistic thing. Like, someone can be allergic to flowers, you know.
Sorry, I'm allergic to bullshit.
You don't change into a furry, bloodthirsty beast on the full moon.
When people make fun of me, I feel sad.
In India, 11-year-old Prithviraj Patil is trying laser treatment. But his hair keeps growing back.
I just want to be like everyone else.
We've been brainwashed by too many werewolf movies, Larry and Danny say. And they want to change the way we view people born different. That's why they recently turned down an offer to appear on The X-Files.
It's true. The X-Files show wanted us to play aliens. We aren't aliens. We're people, just like you.
Anyway, I've gone way over time, so it's time for me to piss off, but not before making fun of weirdos one last time.
Too much salt. Cut back on your salt intake.
Oh, Dylan's too much salt. What do you want? A bit of pepper? A bit of chicken seasoning, you blood-sucking prick?
It's hungry. I go hunting in the moonlit streets for somebody that's right. Fresh blood, the sanguinary feast is all he's living for, and he craves it more and more.
They say the Prince of Darkness is a gentleman, and as it turns out, they're right. Fine gentleman.